Savinho, as far as we were aware, was likely to be a Spurs player very soon. That fell through entirely earlier in the week, and then it looked like, as we're talking with Jack there, it looked like Eze was going to be a Spurs player. Now it looks like he's going to be an Arsenal player. So the question then is whether Spurs come back and try and nab Savinho, and whether his price has just gone up. Like, where do you see, like, it feels very chaotic at the moment. Where do you see all of this with Savinho right now?
I find it pretty baffling, and I'm totally unable to make sense of how much we would be willing to accept for Savinho. How good do we really think he is? Because I mean, if I'm hearing offers in the region of like, was it 50 odd million, 50,
They're
60
talking about
million?
80 now.
80 million. We've turned down 80.
No, but that's the next bid. Apparently, was the last.
Right. I mean, I can only imagine that if it was any other club, not any other club, but most other clubs, if they were bidding what Spurs have already bid, I think we would have accepted it. There's got to be a levy factor in this because he's been such a bastard to deal with and really, been a fly in the ointment of quite a few transfers. Well, particularly Kane stands out in terms of like just let the player do what he wants to do. Wouldn't accept a perfectly good offer. Maybe we're just playing hardball with him to say to complete that game. I mean, there's no guarantee that if we sold Savinho for 60 million and bought Rodrigo for similar, that Rodrigo would be a nailed-on success. But you have to feel that nothing's guaranteed, but you have to feel that's a fairly cast-iron improvement.
I'm interested in Savinho specifically because, if I'm being perfectly honest, I don't really know whether he's going to be good for City because last season, like as a team last season, City was so inconsistent and so like not like themselves. I want to know what Savinho looks like in a good City. Do you know what I mean?
True, yeah. I feel like he's one of those players that on the training pitch he can do absolutely anything, but you put him in a big game scenario and his decision making goes to pot, and then he has flashes and products isn't that good, and then it's like, how old is he? He's only 21, isn't he?
Yeah, you're very young.
And it's like, well, are we just losing our heads a bit? And I don't know. It's hard to know where to kind of centre the argument about him, whether he's going to be a world beater and that's why we're holding out for all this cash. Like, no, we are not letting him go unless it's ridiculous. We don't want another Cole Palmer situation. But I don't know. From what I've seen of him, I'm not massively sold. But then it swings. The swingometer is blurring with speed again because it's like, well, he's 21 and he does show flashes of brilliance. Surely that's the sort of thing you do want to keep. So I don't know. I don't really get it.
Dan, it's like when you think about the squad as well, I mean, we'll come to a question a bit later on about outgoings, but it does feel like City need to get a few players out of the door like ahead of like the bulk of the season before the end of the transfer window. And you can only sell players that you've got offers for. So if you've got a good offer for Savinho, it kind of feels like you might want to take it.
Yeah, maybe. But then, like Chris mentioned, they are talking about replacing him with Rodrigo. I mean, I think it would be quite likely that they could sell him and actually not bother replacing him in the end, and probably wouldn't. They do have a few options, like I've mentioned, in attack that they could probably be all right. They could probably live with that, and then it's one less pet for player to worry about having to sort of fit into the system or into the squad. I just think with Savinho, I think the club have do absolutely the right thing to drive a hard bargain, because I think there is a high probability that he goes on to be a brilliant player. I think it's a little bit like what I was saying with Doku earlier, in that all that's lacking is a bit of end product, and obviously that's kind of the hardest thing to add to any game, the biggest if there is. But I think with Savinho, he's a bit younger than Doku. He's got a little bit more time. I thought last season, he was frustrating, but there were moments where you thought, oh, wow, there's a real player in there. And, for a first season in a new country, in a poorly performing team, maybe it actually wasn't that bad. And maybe there is a chance. I mean, my sort of big hot take for the season is that he ends up being really good. And I know a lot of City fans aren't sold on that at the moment, but I think it's possible. And whenever a player's sort of underperforming their XG like he is, it could just all click and suddenly he's banging him in every week and it looks fantastic. And it does end up being another sort of Cole Palmer situation where it's why did we let him go? He could have, just been a bit more patient, or maybe held out for a bit more money, and he could have been a real asset to the club. So Personally, I hope he stays. That's my personal hope. I hope he stays and that he goes on to be a really good player. But we'll see what happens.